You are a physician who's based in London. You've been
Mm-hmm.
involved in global healthcare for, I think it's about 14 years
Mm-hmm.
now. And you actually spent parts of your childhood growing up in Syria.
Yeah.
When you look at the civil war that's taking place there now, from a healthcare point of view, from an aid giver's point of view, what is the situation?
Sure. So before that, if I may, I think one of the things that has done the Syria crisis such a disfavor is calling it a civil war, because actually this isn't half the population killing the other half.
Right.
What we have is a state-sponsored murder and oppression that was in response to people going out on the street calling for freedom and dignity. And so it's actually a war on civilians.
Right.
And it's a war on civilian structures, and it's had at its heart the targeting of doctors and aid workers and healthcare. And you guys know all about presidents trying to destroy healthcare, right?
I mean, it's...
It's a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, for Syrians, they would wish it would be just in the Senate and people arguing about it.
Absolutely.
You know, in Syria, you've had a situation where Bashar al-Assad has been shown repeatedly to indiscriminately attack medical facilities.
Yeah.
What does that do, and what do you think the purpose of those attacks have been?
Well, I mean, Physicians for Human Rights have been documenting this since the beginning of the war in 2011. They've documented nearly 500 attacks on healthcare facilities. Some of them are indiscriminate, but actually they say that this has been part of a systemic attack on healthcare and murder and torture of healthcare workers. So actually using it as a weapon of war. And it's decimated our healthcare system.
Right.
And that basically means that we've got children who are dying from preventable diseases like pneumonia or treatable diseases. It's women who are now giving birth without healthcare attendance. It means we don't have the anesthesia that we need to perform surgery. And you know what? This is like such a big problem for all of us, right? This isn't just a problem for Syria. And by that I mean that the targeting of healthcare workers, like this is protected by international norms, right? And when we allow that to occur, then actually when it breaks for one, it breaks for all.
It ends up being a problem that affects the world when it could have been stopped in one place.
Absolutely.
When you returned in 2011, you went back to Syria, and this was when the crisis was kicking off.
Yeah.
And you helped, you turned a house into an aid depot, and you were going to help with people donating blood, and you realized that that wasn't enough. Why wasn't it enough, and what did you then decide to do?
Right, so I think in every crisis, the first responders are the people who are affected, right? It's the affected community. And so my family, like many others, turned our houses into warehouses that we could distribute this aid from. But then as the crisis grew and it engulfed the whole country, it sure became apparent like these little efforts were no longer sufficient. So we coalesced and we started to form new charities. And actually it's the local humanitarians, it's the local doctors, nurses and aid workers that do the majority of the aid work in Syria.
Right.
A group called Local to Global said that 75% of the humanitarian work in Syria is being done by Syrian charities. Right, 75%. Like, people don't know that, right? You think it's
I mean, that's amazing, but you wish
that
that the outside would help as well. But I mean, that is an amazing stat when you think about it.
Well, it's amazing, but what's really more amazing, but in a very bad way, is the fact that we get less than 1% of the humanitarian aid budget. Right? Yeah, I know. Look at your face.
Wow.
I know. I know.
You would think for a crisis that affects the world, more would be done, more people would be getting involved. You're working to help now. You've started working to rebuild some of the hospitals that have been destroyed. I remember reading and seeing one of the stories was a children's hospital that was attacked. You were involved in rebuilding that. How did you go about that? Where do you even start?
You start with a weekend of nearly pulling your hair out and feeling really frustrated and angry that this is still happening, because that weekend in eastern Aleppo, 5 hospitals were bombed out of existence that weekend, including the children's hospital. Imagine it had been bombed 6 times before, a children's hospital.
So this was the 7th time it was bombed?
Yeah. And so I was so livid and furious. We'd been spending the last few years rebuilding and helped to build 6 hospitals in Syria. And so I wanted to do something that everyone else could get behind, because I knew that there were so many people who were feeling this frustration.
Yeah.
And that was how the People's Convoy idea came. We planned to crowdfund to rebuild an entire children's hospital, and we wanted to do it in the week before Christmas, in 10 days, and we wanted to take the whole equipment for the hospital from London across Europe to Syria, and we did that. 5,000 people from around the world.
Thank you for sharing that.